Welcome to the Sencast. My name is Dale Pickles. I'm the host of the Sencast and the managing director of B Squared. Each week, myself and a guest talk through a different topic within the world of special educational needs and disability to improve our knowledge, to provide support to professionals working in schools, to empower parents, and to raise awareness. In this episode, we discuss epilepsy's impact on children and young people. And the day this episode is released, the 26th of March, 2026, is International Purple Day, a day to wear purple in support of epilepsy awareness. And I was joined this week by Catherine Hodder, the head of voice policy and influencing from Young Epilepsy. Catherine leads Young Epilepsy's policy, influencing and youth work to improve support systems for children and young people with epilepsy across the UK. The Sencast is created by us here at B Squared, and we help to show the small steps of progress pupils with SEND make, and we help schools to show progress from starting point for a wide range of abilities and ages. We have frameworks for early years, primary, secondary, and alternative provisions. We have frameworks to support SEMH, communication, interaction, independent skills, and employment skills. Visit the B Square website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our assessment software. Now, come on, let's get on with that podcast. This week's guest is Catherine Hodder from Young Epilepsy. Catherine leads Young Epilepsy's policy, influencing and youth voice work to improve support systems for children and young people with epilepsy across the UK. Welcome to the show, Catherine.
Thank you. Yeah, really glad to be here.
You are very, very welcome. Now, today, the day of release, the 26th of March, 2026, is International Purple Day, a day to wear purple in support of epilepsy awareness, and today's episode is about raising that awareness and understanding around epilepsy. Epilepsy affects around 1 in 200 children in the UK, yet it's one of those conditions that lots of schools still feel unprepared for. So today, we're going to get into what that actually looks like for children day to day and what schools can do to make a real difference. So let's start with epilepsy. What is it, but also what are some of the myths? What are some of the misunderstandings around epilepsy?
I'm sure. But as you said, like epilepsy is like one of the most common long-term conditions for children and people. It's really common, but lots of people aren't very familiar with it or don't really feel confident about understanding it and knowing what to do. It's a neurological condition, so it's a condition of the brain, and our bodies, they work on our brains use electrical activity to operate different things to control our movement. When a seizure happens, there's a surge of electrical activity, so the messages get confused or mixed up. That means results in someone having a seizure. You know, when people think about epilepsy, they often think of what's actually called a tonic seizure, where someone goes stiff, they fall down, and then they shake, and then they regain consciousness after a while. Actually, epilepsy affects everyone differently. There are so many different kinds of seizures. You could be a seizure like absent seizure. It's quite common in young people where they might be sitting in a classroom and it looks like they're daydreaming. Actually, they're losing consciousness and they're missing out on whatever's happening. Quite brief, they come back, but they don't know what they missed. And then other seizures, myoclonic seizures. These are like jerks. So, someone they just suddenly go like with their arms, something like. So many different kinds of seizures because the brain is responsible for so many different functions. And that's why, like, if you're supporting a young person with epilepsy, it's really important to know how does epilepsy affect them, because it's really easy to make assumptions. Epilepsy looks really different for people.
So before we started recording, I was kind of telling you my very limited experience around epilepsy, and the fact that I witnessed one when I was young, and I had no idea what it was, and that was quite scary. And their seizure, they went like a board and were standing and went straight down onto the ground. I also use the term epileptic fit as well, which you're going to tell that's not the correct language. But the other one was somebody who, again, it was somebody later in life, and I didn't know what it was, but I knew they obviously needed help and went over, and being quite a large person, I can generally help a man handle people if needed. So I was straight in there. But just after you said that, I actually realised I have experienced young people blanking out. So I didn't realise kind of if that's part of it. So I have experienced that where they literally sort of look at you going, "What happened? Why are you looking at me?"
Yeah. And often, I think for young people, particularly with those less noticeable seizures, unfortunately, a lot of young people don't get believed or get told off for paying attention. So that's why it's really important for school staff and supporting them to know this is just part of epilepsy. This is how it looks. Young people might have a kind of seizure where a focal seizure that's just in part of their brain, they still might be conscious, they might be able to talk to you, but something weird is happening with their senses. Something feels very strange to them, or maybe their eyesight goes very strange. Um, yeah, as you said, it's quite common.
What I'm saying is, I used the fit word. That is not a good word to use. We've moved on from that.
As an organisation, Young Epilepsy, we talk about seizures, and that's the common language that people use. Obviously, young people might describe seizures like this. Obviously, they're free to use the language if that works for them. What we found is that seizures accurate also helps cross the message that just the shape people think of when you think of epilepsy means that we could talk more different types of seizure without people making assumptions about what they might.
Definitely. So you've kind of talked about how the seizures are different and there's different types. When people think about epilepsy and what causes them, they're probably going to go straight to flashing lights, because if you watch a program with flashing lights, it will warn you all. But that's not the only cause.
No, and actually, the percentage of people that have what's called photosensitive epilepsy is very small, probably around 3 to 5% of people with epilepsy. So people obviously are trying to be cautious. They don't want to prompt a seizure. They want to trigger a seizure. Again, people's triggers are going to be really unique to them. A lot of that is around young people looking after themselves, eating, maybe not getting overheated, taking their medication regularly. Some people, when they're changing medication, might be more susceptible to having breakthrough seizure when perhaps they would have otherwise their seizures under control. So it is very individualized, and that's why, as an organisation, we've been a campaign called Understand. And it's all about children being safe and included at school. The importance of an individual healthcare plan for every child with epilepsy. So individual healthcare is a part of the sort of structure of support. Hopefully, all schools and education settings, which just kind of sets that basic information that people need to know to make sure that young person is safe and included, really, so that people know what to do with the emergency, so that people understand what does this young person's seizures, what do they look like, and what action do we need to take? Because sometimes with seizures, you might just let them on their course, check in with a young person, they get on with their day, and it's going to be they might be more at risk of needing emergency intervention, maybe emergency medication. So that's why it's really important to have those individual health care plans in place for every young person. And we know that epilepsy does have an impact on emotional well-being and learning as well. So sometimes sometimes the focus can be on, okay, well, if a seizure happens, when I call an ambulance, do I need to call an ambulance? Those conversations. And sometimes we miss actually that wider long-term impact on young people and living with this uncertainty. They in day often struggle with issues with their memory because of their condition or their medication, and having epilepsy can be really isolating for young people because, for one reason or another, maybe they're told or you can't join in with this activity because you too risky. That's a really heartbreaking thing, for young people to hear. And obviously, sometimes young people feel nervous about going out doing new things, or maybe their parents feel nervous about. Part of what we're trying to do as an organisation is to equip young people and families with information, confidence to live their lives with epilepsy, to do the things that they want to do, and help get across to those that support them important information about supporting these young people and knowing how epilepsy does actually impact, rather than making assumptions. Because epilepsy, unfortunately, still isn't spoken about a lot. Feels as though there may be still a degree of stigma around those discussions. So possible that people may not open up things. So it's really important, I guess, for schools and others to open up that conversation with young people and just hear from them, really, because the impact on the young person is going to be specific to them.
And it is, it's weighing up the pros and cons of, if you don't do anything, you're going to be completely safe. But if you don't do anything, you're not going to be enjoying life. So it's for kind of every situation. It's not you can't have generic rules. By the sounds of it, is everyone's going to be unique in how it affects them, their triggers. That actually their seizures are going to be quite unique. And again, just not knowing is, you said there's a very small percentage of the epileptic population have those photosynthesis seizures. But is it a case of I will have this type of seizure, or might I have a variety of seizures from different triggers? Kind of, is it much more complicated than I realise? It's not a case of don't eat strawberries and then this won't happen, or we're not quite sure, but it could be something around here and that will cause.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. My understanding is it's not as simple as specific thing will cause this specific seizure. I think there are lots of different factors that push a brain to go into a seizure. So it could be a combination of different factors. Young people with epilepsy could have multiple different types of seizure. So that's why it's really important to have a record of, okay, these are different seizure types. This is what they like, because they each might need a different response. The young person might have absent seizures and tonic seizures, but they're at risk of having a prolonged seizure, prolonged tonic seizure, one where they go stiff and fall down and shake. Actually, those types of seizures can be particularly dangerous if they go on too long. That's why any seizure really that goes on too long. So a seizure type might need access to their emergency medication, but for another seizure type, it might just be that they can get on with their once they finished. They just need someone to check in with them, make sure they're all right. Don't need to go and have a rest in the medical room for a bit, and check what they might have missed in them, and then they can carry on.
So does heightened anxiety, heightened stress kind of have that impact? So if I do something one day and it's cool, but I go in the next day and I'm worrying about something else, then that can contribute.
Yes. Stress can be a seizure trigger. And we also know that young people with epilepsy are 4 times more likely to experience a mental health problem than their peers. So we're also working with the charity to see what can we do and how can we improve the support systems around young people to improve mental well-being for young people with epilepsy. Because it's a challenging condition to live with, and it's really important for young people to look after themselves, look after their well-being, and to be able to go and live their lives, do the things that they want to do.
Because I'm kind of reflecting back to the 2 seizures I witnessed, And I would describe the events around them as completely unremarkable. I literally, the one which was probably coming up to 30 years ago, was just two people having a conversation. And then he had the, I'm not going to say it, you're going to say it, the shaking, what's it called?
Tonic-clonic seizure.
Tonic-clonic seizure. And that was literally, he was just having a conversation and that was out. And it was like, wow, out of nowhere. And again, the second one was exactly, he was having lunch. Completely different person, just having lunch, having a conversation, and then had a tonic-clonic seizure. So,
Yeah.
and that's the sort of thing, it's not like you have a nice simple, you're allergic to strawberries rule. I'm going to go back to strawberries, nice and simple. It's, you're allergic to strawberries when the wind's over this speed and you're stressed. It's that sort of, it's not easy to really nail down. It is so many factors, which I guess is why people become overprotective, because it's hard to specify.
I think over time, it might be that the epilepsy nurse or doctor might be able to advise on particular triggers. And it might be that over time, the young person, maybe the parent as well, can help keep a record of what was happening before the seizure. And then that helps them build up a picture of, okay, for me, this is what is likely to cause a seizure for me. And unpredictability young people are living with, I think it has a big impact. You know, for some seizures, for some absent seizures where people sort of blank, they might carry on doing what they're doing. So they might be crossing a road and they had an seizure. They might just keep walking, or even if they're talking, they might carry on talking, essentially kind of lost conscious. Yeah, having to live with disability is really challenging. I think for people, I think you touched on it, but people that see seizures happen, clearly ones where people collapse on the floor, can be really stressing as well for other people. Because what we want to do is make sure that people feel confident, know how to support that young person. We recently watched a sort of series of videos, some really short videos on different seizure types. They're called You Can Help. So go on YouTube, so young people explaining different seizure types and how to help if you have that type of seizure. Slightly different messaging for each one, but it's broadly about, stay with me, keep calm, reassure me, time the seizure. Timing can be really important if seizure goes on too long. Keep me, more people to feel confident. But it can be distressing for people to watch.
I think probably the reason I reacted differently the second time is because I'd witnessed my first seizure and was like, what's that? And then you kind of have that reflective conversation. So what do you do in that situation becomes the immediate thing. And it was, I can't remember where, but basically what you don't want to be is near the edge of a table. You kind of want them to be in a safe area. And again, I'll come to that bit in a second. So when I saw that second seizure, lots of people almost they just froze and just were in shock. And it was a room full of adults and everyone just stood there in shock. And there were two nurses who went straight there, but they were kind of two little women. This bloke was my size. And I was just like, what do you want me to do? And I kind of thought he probably needed to be on the floor, not partly on a chair, so that actually we could get him onto the floor in a controlled manner. And I knew that there should be no chairs and tables near him.
Exactly.
But the bit I'm not sure on, and you'll probably go, well, it depends, is and I know there's some things about the head thrashing, and there's lots of, and you probably can't give generic because it'll be instant specific, but it was about, should you prevent them from moving or should you allow them a certain amount of moving?
That's a really good question. So you shouldn't ever hold someone down for having a seizure. If someone's having like convulsions, so they're shaking, you need to let the seizure run its course. Make sure they're not going to injure themselves. So, like you say, clear things away from them. If they're on the floor, put something under there so they're not going to bang them. That's the main thing. In terms of intervening, the only time where you might do, well, restraining them, but if someone, for example, with having a kind of seizure where then they haven't fallen down, they're wandering, don't really know where they're going, you have to keep them away from danger. So you might try and gently steer them away, for example, as something like that. But generally, you have to let the seizure run its course, but just keep people away from hazard, like you did, moving things away.
Yeah, because ours was complicated. He was eating, so I think he still had a mouthful of food, and it was just so. And I was trying to remember, but I think we ended up kind of after a while he was just like in the recovery position.
So it might be that it's just very difficult to put someone in the recovery position if convulsing, but what you
Yeah,
can do
so
is sort of gently this if you can, very gently. Hopefully that means it's something, something might move up. When the seizure's finished, put them into the recovery position then.
but yeah, it was. I think it was towards the end that he and it's literally one of those things. Obviously, the information I'd learned from the previous one or having that conversation afterwards all went in. And I'm very happy that I wasn't taking the lead. The two nurses who happened to be there or people who'd been trained, I was just the muscles. But again, you mentioned about maybe afterwards, or you may have to go get their medication. And in my head, there's two types of medication. There's preventative and there's responsive, or not, probably not the correct terms. So one is I think you take every day or every so often to kind of. You tell me the correct terms before I
Sure.
completely murder it.
Right, you're on the right track. Regular medication is called anti-seizure medication, and most young people would take that once, maybe twice a day. That's the preventative medication. That's to make a seizure less likely to happen. And lots of young people are able to find a medication that works really well for them in terms of controlling seizures, but they have some side effects that come with that. That's why it's also important to have a conversation with them how they learn, how they memory, their mood, how they're feeling. And then the other type of medication is rescue medication or emergency medication. Is usually buccal midazolam, which is it's a controlled drug. It comes in like an oral syringe. I'm sure lots of people are familiar with Helpol style syringes. A little bit like that, so no needle. Goes in the called the buccal cavity, which is kind of in the mouth. And each young person will receive to care from the healthcare team. It means they're at risk of a prolonged seizure or they've already had a prolonged seizure. And these could be really dangerous. They continue. That should actually cause brain damage or might lead to death if they go on too long. So it's really important people know. So that young person has to have medication. The seizure goes beyond 5 minutes, something like that. So it's really important that staff get the training they need for that because it's a controlled, because of the impact it has on the system. Epilepsy Specialist Nurses Association, as they've produced some guidelines, buccal midazolam training, emergency medication training, because it's really important, right standard of training, because it can impact, for example, might have an impact on young people's breathing. It's really important that people know what to do.
And that's also if they are having I've lost the word again.
Seizure?
The shaking
Tonic
seizure.
seizure.
Tonic clonic. See, it was not there. My head was somewhere else. Okay, it's rhyming in my head. But if they're having a tonic clonic seizure, then if you're trying to give that medication, then it's going to obviously be how do we do this safely and effectively? So that's not a simple thing. So you can't just go, yeah, I'll wing it. That's got to be done with full understanding.
That's a really good point. Our challenge is in trying to administer medication. That's where the training would be able to talking around how you could do that. using the medication.
Complicated. Next bit, again, you've talked about the impact on mental health and various things, and then we've talked about kind of them having their seizure. But that seizure can be physically and emotionally draining. It isn't like, oh, that's done, let's move on, back to. No, depending on that child, the situation, that could be like, that's the rest of the day, that's done.
Yeah. And for some young people, it will take them hours, possibly days to recover. That kind of comes down to the seizure type for the young person and or what it's like for them as an individual. Just it's really important to minimize just be open to hearing what people say. Don't make assumptions about what people need. What we've also found is that for of young people, sometimes can get back to their day as long as they've got somewhere to rest for a while. They can join lessons, but sometimes you end up in scenarios where schools or the setting that sending young people home unnecessarily. For some young people, it's the right thing to do, but for others, won't get on with their day. They just need a little bit of rest time.
And one of the things that occasionally when epilepsy comes up on the TV and they talk about a child, they'll talk about, I think they've used the term severe epilepsy. I'm not sure if that's the correct term, but they might talk about, oh, without this medication, they would have 100 fits a day. I don't know if it's a day or a week, but what to me sounds like an absolutely insane number. And then you might have children or people who might go a whole year or two without a fit because of the medication they're on. So it is a huge spectrum, not only in their type of seizures, the triggers, but how often. And I'm guessing there are those who probably are epileptic but don't have medication because they've kind of learnt how to live their life.
I think that's a good question. I think my understanding would be got a diagnosis of epilepsy. Generally speaking, you would be on a seizure treatment of some kind, simply because of the nature of the risks around seizures, which we've touched on a little bit, just because it can be extremely dangerous. And also, if you think people as they get older, wanting to try if someone wants to have a seizure, then that automatically means they have to stop really if they can get their driving license back today, or seizure types have been having a breakthrough seizure can be really dangerous. You're right in it's a very big spectrum. There are some people whose seizures can be well controlled by medication, by sort of standard anti-seizure medication. We also know that about 1 in 3 young people, or 1 in 3 people with epilepsy, has seizures continue despite being on medication, so that they're not able at this point to access a medication that works for them. It's incredibly frustrating, and actually that hasn't changed in recent years, and what we really need through in our research to work out what is it for those young people, that's going to be a game changer for them, because there are young people that have debilitating seizures, many seizures during the day. The more we're finding out more all the time, but typically for those young people who have those types of seizures, it might be that they have what's called epilepsy syndrome, where the doctors have been able to identify a specific pattern of seizures, or maybe there's a specific genetic change to the epilepsy they have. might also have like co-occurring conditions alongside that. So it could be a developmental condition that has epilepsy as a feature of it, but also the other conditions and other challenges that they're trying to get support for. So it's complicated. And we need more research. And I suppose perhaps at the other end of the spectrum, we have some, like particularly young people who maybe they have seizures during the day, but maybe they have seizures during the night. Maybe schools aren't aware of it. A young person may still have an impact for them during the day. So it's always important as well, even if a seizure isn't going to happen during the day, or even if a young person's seizures are controlled, that doesn't mean the condition's having an impact.
Yes, so basically, again, I'm just going to reiterate for my benefit as well. So basically, if someone is epileptic, they will be on that seizure prevention
That's my
medication.
understanding. I mean, there are people who
For some reason, can't take that or choose. There are always going to be those. There are always outliers, aren't there?
well, I get one of the important messages that we're trying to across to young people is essential education, even if it's not quite perfect. Whatever you've been prescribed, it's really important. Take it when you can. They look after their well-being, because that's going to be really important for keeping them seizure-free. And we know that helping people stay seizure-free reduces the possibility they might reduce the possibility that they could end up dying as a result of epilepsy. There are unfortunate cases of people dying. It's called expected death, SUDEP, and we know that seizure control part of that picture, but still lots to be researched around epilepsy death, what causes it. We do know that if people can their medication as well as they can themselves well, giving them a really good opportunity to live well with their condition.
And would it be a case of not everyone has the kind of emergency medication? It would be just a case of some young people will.
That's right, yeah. So just those young people when they've already had what's called a prolonged seizure, so a seizure that's gone on too long, or maybe they identify the kind of epilepsy that a young person has. Yes, they might be likely to have it, or they've already had a prolonged seizure. They will have been given a plan from their healthcare team. So if you're in a school and you think, well, I don't know what to do, the family should have from the epilepsy nurse or the doctor. Okay, this is the dosage of the medication. It needs to be given at this point. You need this point, or if this happens. And again, the training will help support that.
And that will all be in their individual healthcare plan, all that sort of stuff, the guidance and information.
Interesting. I think the language around this can be confusing because there are so many different plans. There are loads of different plans in education and loads of different plans in healthcare. So it can be confusing. But essentially, the individual healthcare plan is the document that's owned, if you like, by the school. It's about what is the school going to do to support this young person, and also what is the information shared with the school by the young person and parent. The idea is that the healthcare will feed into that. So, you'll reflect the information or you'll include it in the individual healthcare school. So, because you really need that clarity from healthcare professionals around clear emergencies to do when to give emergency medication, that information will form part of the healthcare goes beyond medication. And that was one of the things when the law was changed over 10 years ago. Schools shifted from medication management approach to an approach that's more holistic, thinks more child-centered, it's more about the young person. Yes, we need medication, but also how is this health condition impacting this young person? Measures might we need to bring into play? And often that measures schools already have in place. So, for example, emotional well-being, it might just connecting them with the right service. And of course, schools have loads of expertise in supporting with memory issues, for example. So just putting these young people on different people's radars. So okay, so for them, their epilepsy impacts this. Oh, well, I know about this technique I can use. It's going to help them, so I'll use that. It should be like a really good communication tool to help people.
And one of the things I think kind of, again, my experience of seeing that first seizure and that impact on me, and I think I was about 18 or 19, so it was a long time ago. But again, for that young person and their peers, that more we can raise their understanding around epilepsy generally, but also their friends, their peers' epilepsy, that's a crucial part. So, and that's, I think, sometimes with inclusion in these things, when you do have rare conditions or things like that, actually, how have we educated all the people around the school so they know what to do? They're not responsible for it. It's not saying you are responsible. It's going, if this happens, one of you do this, one of you do this, and also help them understand what this means.
Yeah, right. And that's why I think Purple Day is so important. It's raising awareness and whole school awareness. And for some young people, they might not to talk about it as it relates to them as an individual, but there's an opportunity to talk about condition generally. That can encourage the sort of where people might say, actually, that affects me, or my mum has epilepsy, or something like that. Helping people understand conditions. So, there might be lots of outdated old ideas about what people think might cause the seizure. So it's, telling them about it being a brain condition, feeling confident to know how you can support your friend that have a seizure. Like you said, it's not their responsibility. Obviously, it's the adults around them, but helping them to understand and to know what.
And I think a bit you kind of touched on there is that young person might not want to share. And to me, that is kind of indicative of how inclusive that school environment is. Because if that school is really inclusive and they've not necessarily day one of that school, but they've been there a while, they should be confident knowing that actually when they share that, it will be received in a positive way.
Yeah. In terms of inclusion, you're right. Hopefully, school has got inclusion, right? Understands or will create an environment in which young people that have conditions feel more able to talk. Actually, health conditions fall under the bracket of disability as well. So, when schools are looking at disability equality measures, that also includes these young people, includes young people with long-term health condition. So things like reasonable adjustment, so making like little changes so that people with epilepsy and other disabilities can access the school, access their work, and the same opportunity as their friends.
Now, before we get on to Purple Day, one thing I've just remembered looking at the notes is there is a consultation going on with the DFE, isn't there?
Yeah, that's right. That has just recently launched. So, as I mentioned earlier, the law changed over. Statutory guidance came out on supporting peoples with medical conditions, and for the first time since 2015, the Department for Education has now published some draft guidance on this, which is also now speaking to settings and colleges. So hopefully be really useful for these other settings as well, not just schools. And the current guidance doesn't have a lot of sort of practical information in, and this draft that's been published has a lot more, a bit more detailed information on specific conditions and has strengthening the framework around supporting supporting children and young people with medical conditions. So for those people that are listening, yeah, please get involved. Please respond to the consultation that's open and submit. And yeah, that's certainly the source of guidance for those who are thinking about, okay, well, what should I have in place in my school, in my system? Go back to the statutory guidance, and that will help you. We lots of things that we're really pleased to see in that draft guidance. Hope it's going to be an opportunity to make sure support is based on young people's needs and like developing that openness with young people and their parents. So to have that communication sharing, to get that information, to make sure people understand that epilepsy affects everyone differently, and they can be open to listening to young people and parents. Things can go a lot smoother, and that young person is going to give an education.
Definitely. And if you don't know that consultation existed, you don't know where it is, you will find a link along with lots of other things in the show notes. Now, I mentioned Purple Day at the beginning. You just mentioned it a minute ago. So let's talk about International Purple Day.
Yeah, so Purple Day takes place on the 26th of March this year, 26th of March 2026. The 26th
Today,
is.
if you're listening live, as we were not live, listening as we released it.
Happy Purple Day, everyone. So this is a really great opportunity for schools to build some of that whole school awareness that we were just talking about. We've got lots of resources on our website, an assembly, an activity in class, and fundraising, lots of different things. And purple is sort of the colour of epilepsy. So that's why it's called Purple Day. So yeah, just encourage schools to take a look on our website. Obviously, Purple Day is today, but you might help you start thinking for next year or doing something throughout the year to increase people's awareness about epilepsy. There's some really nice things in with the curriculum as well in terms of people's health education, understanding about physical and emotional condition. So, yeah, please, go to Young Epilepsy's website, take a look, and get involved, because we really need more people to raise awareness about this condition. It's so common for young people. So often, young people aren't treated unfairly because they're not getting access, because their epilepsy isn't understood. So assumptions are made, or they're told you can't do this, you can't do that. Yeah, it's so important. We ran a survey with young people and with parents all about epilepsy support in school, and unfortunately, we found 1 in 3 weren't getting the support they need to fully participate in school life. So, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes young people are having seizures and they're not being spotted, or they're being told off for having a seizure because it's understood. Lots of staff are confident in what to do when a seizure happens, and we've got loads of information on our website to help with that and resources. So yeah, again, take a look at our website. Lots of information and resources for staff there. And children being unnecessarily excluded from trips or other opportunities. Some really heartbreaking examples from young people being excluded from their prom or the year 6 leavers play, or school photos, PGL trips, just really sad. And with the right measures in place, most children with epilepsy can take part in all these different things. It's just about getting the right communication and putting a few arrangements in place.
And I worry that that's also the tip of the iceberg. You're talking about almost as school-led events, but what about birthday parties, sleepovers, all those things that happen with their peers? I wonder how many people go, oh, should we invite them? Or they're epileptic, or not. And almost like, because there's lack of understanding, they will go, I'm not sure what I need to do, so it's best not to invite them.
Yeah, I think you could be right. And that's the reason why kind of Young Epilepsy exists. We want to equip people with information so they feel confident and help young people and parents have those conversations with others so they feel confident what to do. But right, all these little things, can be real barriers to young people with epilepsy living their lives and having a childhood and teen years, and such an important time in people's lives, isn't it? Whether they're learning, they're developing as people, they're developing all these different skills and experiences. And it's really important that children with epilepsy don't miss out on.
Definitely. And that's how I'm going to end it, because that's a really important message, that we don't want them to miss out, and they're not missing out because of their condition. They're often missing out because of the misunderstandings and misconceptions around their condition, and everyone being overprotective.
Yeah.
And there isn't a nice generic, this is what epilepsy looks like, with nice 10-point lists. It's, as you said, it's going to be very individual, and it's got to be that individual conversation. It's got to be using that information to develop that individual healthcare plan. Having that environment that that person feels happy to share with their peers about their epilepsy. Because what you want is you want their peers to look out for them. The peers to go, oh, let's not do that because they can't be included. So let's do that instead because they can be included. Making those small changes that no one's really missing out. It's a different thing, but now that child can be included. You want them to be able to go, I want them there. And then when their parents go, oh, but I thought they were epileptic, the kid go, oh, yeah, but it's fine because of X, Y, Z. Just ask their mum. It'll be fine. That's what you want to hear.
Yeah.
That's when the kids go, oh, yeah, it's epileptic, but it's not nothing. It's manageable, and we've got that understanding, and we can support it.
Absolutely.
So, thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for educating me.
Thanks very much for inviting us.
I always love these things where I'm learning and I get to ask all the questions. So thank you. And Catherine has said, give me lots of links, and you'll find all of that information in our show notes, all about International Purple Day, supporting children and young people with epilepsy, the Understanding My Epilepsy resource, and that draft guidance, that consultation around medical conditions, and also all of Young Epilepsy's social media channels and so on. And as always, you'll find the show notes wherever you listen to the podcast or on the Sencast website. And if you want to get in touch, let us know your thoughts, suggest topics or anything else, please send us a message on social media or send an email to hello@thesencast.com. The Sencast is created by us here at B Squared, and we help to show the small steps of progress pupils with SEND make. And we help schools to show progress from starting point for a wide range of ages and abilities. We have frameworks to early years, primary, secondary, and alternative provisions, and we have frameworks to support SEMH, communication interaction, independent skills, and employment skills, and a soon-to-be-released executive function skills. Visit the B Square website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our assessment software. But for now, thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Sencast. It's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from Young Epilepsy.
Bye, everyone.